Hello, everyone. My name is Shakira Yazdani. I am the JURIST Desk Editor for Afghanistan. Today, we are speaking with Fatima Framarz. Fatima had worked as a journalist for the two prominent newspapers in Afghanistan, Ashta Soap and Itlat Roz, before the Kabul takeover by Taliban. In her role, she has been the people's voice, especially women, for many years. She has covered various topics from education development to gender, security, and politics. She is current LLM student at American University of Central Asia. She has another master's degree in international relations with concentration on politics and security in Central Asia. Fatima studied her bachelor at Kabul University in psychology. Thank you, Fatima John, for agreeing to interview with JURIST Legal News. How are you this evening?
Salam Shakira John, thank you. I'm doing well. And I hope you are doing well too. And thank you for having me in this conversation.
Thank you. As we hear, Taliban are imposing new restriction on women almost now on a daily basis. And the very recent one is on mandatory hijab. What is the new imposing rule about hijab in Afghanistan? And personally, do you agree with this restriction?
Well, if I try to conclude this new rule that the Taliban try to impose on women about the hijab, it's for me it's gender apartheid, and as you know, the gender apartheid, it's if I try to use the some scholars, feminist scholars quotation, they say that the gender apartheid is an economic and social sexual discrimination against some individuals because of their gender and sex, and it's a system that enforced by using either physical or legal practices to regulate individuals to subordinate positions. And what the Taliban currently are doing against women and what they are imposing on women, it's I think it's a gender apartheid, because first they try to prevent them from working. The first thing, when they entered Kabul, they stopped women from working. Then they banned the secondary education, and now they impose like a dress code or a hijab on them, and it's, I don't know, it's stupid, and I cannot be agree with this with no means. And I think no woman who got educated in the past 20 years, they cannot be agree with this rules. But yeah.
We have seen different demonstration from women in Afghanistan. They always say that it's not about the hijab that they are disagreeing or they have problem with. It's about the choice that it's taken away from them. In light of this, why do you think Taliban are imposing such restriction on women?
I think the Taliban imposed this restriction on women because of taking some specific advantages from a vulnerable group like women in Afghanistan. You know, women have no representative to protect their rights within the leadership and the decision-making level of the Taliban. And the Taliban do these things to somehow like take advantage for a specific political gain, like international recognition for their government. And for this, they have like, before the US withdrawal, they have the war, the fight with the Afghan government and the Afghan national military forces. And when the fight was over, they had nothing to like fight for that, for getting international recognition. And now they take advantage of women to get this recognition from the international community. That I think that's why they imposed this restriction on women and girls in Afghanistan.
Now, there has been a couple of reports that I heard today. It's that the new rule, the impose of new rule, in the new rule their new rules are being imposed and enforced very restrictively. Today, many women were beaten. They have entered the schools to just check whether the very limited number of women that are working as teachers in the schools observed this new restriction, this hijab, mandatory hijab. What do you think? Does this series of restriction mean Taliban are trying to delete and omit the identity women made for the last 20 years? Does this mean they are trying to create a new identity for Afghan women in Afghanistan?
I think they know that they kind of sure that they will not be able to change their woman identity, because women are 51% of the population, and they know that it's impossible to remove everything that's women earned in past 20 years and define a new identity. And they also know that they will not resist if they go this way. As I mentioned before, they just impose this restriction to they are somehow hungry and thirsty for this getting international recognition, for this diplomatic exchange with some countries, that they would like to be in diplomatic relationships and in official political engagement in the context of international relations. That's why they do this. But I'm not right, maybe I'm wrong, but I think they know that it's impossible to define a new identity. It's it's stupid, it's not possible. But they just no, they have no other option to to take for this diplomatic relationship with other countries, especially for Western countries, the international donors who helped Afghanistan in the past 20 years, and for getting their financial donations again. They try to impose, they try to say that we have this power to they know that the Western countries who invested a lot of money on the woman empowerment, women education, and everything about this gender equality and everything about women. And now they target the women to say that if you are not recognize us as a government, and if you are not going to enter with diplomatic relationship with us, we can destroy your what you earned in 20 past years. But I think that they show that they cannot do that, and it's just they use it as a I have forgotten the specific term. And they just use women as that to receive both this international recognition and this financial aid from donor countries.
Now we have witnessed that your own colleagues were beaten to cover the woman demonstration in Kabul.
Yes.
A few months ago.
Yes.
What do you think, what will happen and what will these rules impact upon society as a whole?
You know, every society have its own diversity, like in many developed countries, like those countries who recognize the LGBT rights, they have like more than 2 genders. But in countries, in societies like Afghanistan, at least we need 2 genders to represent a society. But imposing these rules on women, they kind of layered the circumstances to a society with only 1 gender, without any diversity. Even though I think it's not possible, but if they like go beyond these rules, at the end the implication will be like, I cannot like imagine the Kabul streets or other cities or in rural areas that you can only see men on the streets, only male and no female. And I don't know how it looks like, but it will be the implication. And I don't know in which part of the world, in which part of the earth you can find such a society, but the Taliban are going crazy to like bring a society like that in Afghanistan, and a society without any gender diversity. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it could be possible if the international community do not act the time that's necessary. I think this would be the implication. And you know, when the Taliban, I heard that they said that if the women are not going to follow these rules, then they will punish the male of the male relative of that female or that woman. You can just basically imagine that a woman is walking on the streets in Kabul. She's not wearing that hijab that the Taliban defined for female, and then she goes home. Then the Taliban follow her, and I don't know how it looks like, but it like violates many rights, including the right to choose the dress code for individuals, and it violates the right to privacy and many things. And in the past 2 or 3 days, I have been busy with my deadlines, with my papers and final exams and something like that. That's why I didn't follow this. And the news regarding the international community, I just read a tweet from UN Secretary General and UN representative for Afghanistan, and they say that they are worried about this, which is not help women in Afghanistan. And yeah, and they all are a massive violation of human rights of women in Afghanistan, the implication of imposing this rule. And the international community are busy somewhere else, and they just, I don't know what they are doing, but it will be another disaster, not only for Afghanistan, but for the regional countries, regional superpowers, and maybe in countries beyond the region.
And it's admiring how women in Afghanistan bravely fight for their rights through demonstration and is still using peaceful means to ask and attract international communities, to look at the situation and maybe react how Taliban is governing the country. And in light of that, we have seen that only international community condemned these series of restrictions and have done nothing. What in your opinion, what can the international community do about these violations and these human rights crisis in Afghanistan?
You know, the international community can do many things. For example, they start from, like, for example, some of the Taliban members and some of their activities are under sanction and they are not internationally recognized as an independent government. And if, as I mentioned earlier, just because the Taliban are hungry for this international recognition and for some financial aid, they do this to the women in Afghanistan. As you mentioned, there are many issues that the Taliban could like address them, like poverty is one of them, one of the biggest problem in the current situation of Afghanistan, but they are just busy with the women, how they dress, how they, what they wear, how they work, or should they be allowed to go to school or not. And I think if international community want to somehow help the women in Afghanistan, they can impose more sanction. For example, they cannot, they can impose on sanction on Taliban, the Taliban's leadership members from prowling, and prevent them from sending diplomatic representative to other countries. And also, you know, the Taliban were invited in Norway for something, and later to Switzerland, or it was another country. But these sanctions could help the women somehow. Yeah, and also there's they put some more requirement for this recognition, even though they said that if you like not consider women as like equal gender to men in Afghanistan, they will not get recognized. But they have all been concluded in words. If they impose these sanctions in action, then it will be helpful, I guess.
We are in a situation in Afghanistan that we do not care whether people are dying from hunger, but Taliban are trying to cover a woman the way they want and want to use this. I don't know for what reason, but they are trying to focus on a topic, how women should dress up in a state of caring about people who are dying from poverty. This is very unfortunate, and I don't know, I don't have any words to say how awful the situation and crisis, human crisis in Afghanistan is. Do you have any last word regarding ongoing situation, and maybe for the international community and international audience that listens to you and see this interview?
As the last words, I have one hope and one request from international community. And I know I'm not in a position to request international community or countries who can help us, but still, first, I hope that the Taliban will not resist that way, because they don't know how to govern the country. If they have a very simple idea about how to govern, how to rule a country, then they were going to address some like more necessary issues like poverty, like security, like, you know, and you hear about the situation that people face in Afghanistan. And my request from international community is this, that the Taliban are a radical group. If they radicalize Afghanistan, then this country, it has been like for many years, it has been a specific term for referring Afghanistan as safe haven for terrorists. And if the Taliban going to this radical way, then this country will be another. It has always, not always, it has been, and now it's more than ever, it's a safe haven for radicals, and it will impact the situation in other countries and in the whole world. And they can stop this. And my request is that please do something to help first women in Afghanistan, and then all people in Afghanistan, regional countries, and the whole international community, because they are like the Taliban. They are, I think, they are a cancer for the whole international community, and if they don't go to find a treatment for this, then they will like be affected. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's pretty much late and I don't want to keep you longer. Thank you very much for the interview. And I hope things gets better, and you as a representative and your voice as a representative of women in Afghanistan be heard. Thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.